meeting being recorded?
I was about to press record.
Yes.
It hasn't been recording yet, but I was about to press record once we're officially.
And it's recording for me. So I have been recording since the beginning. Yep. And we are still in what is considered the practice mode. So you can get the feel for it. We're mimicking what it's like in a board meeting. So we're still in the practice mode. I'll start broadcasting once everyone is here. We do not have an audience, so you won't see attendees joining, but this is the pre to the meeting.
Thank you.
Great, then with that, I will share my screen and begin the presentation. All right, all set.
Hey. Oh, do we have a question? I see Councilmember Lopez, your hand is raised.
That has been addressed. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good. Good. Nice to see you all here today. My name is Nick Chassett. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of East Bay Community Energy. I have been with East Bay since since around the point of formation. I was the first employee. Have as much institutional knowledge of the organization as more or less anyone, other than, of course, Stephanie, who is our board clerk. Unfortunately, will only be our board clerk for another week and a half. Our loss is Santa Cruz County's gain. Stephanie will be making her way down to, I guess, is that Central Coast, if you will, to serve as the clerk of their county board of supervisors. So we're losing a lot of our institutional knowledge and just all around one of the best people to work with in the organization. So for those of you who have not had a chance to work with Stephanie, my apologies. You're not going to be able to do so, but for the most part, the rest of us are a pretty good group as well. So I hope things are going to be good there. So the purpose of this session is to provide a general overview of the agency. What CCAs do, what we do. The mechanics of our board and our committees, some of the major upcoming activities that we have planned over the next couple of months, and then also make sure we have plenty of opportunity for Q&A. I'd also say, at any point during this presentation, please do not hesitate to interject with questions. This is meant as a time for you. As Dan said, my proverbial door is always open. So I'll make sure to share my email and phone number with everybody. And, please never hesitate to give me a call with any question you may have. I do regular check-ins with a subset of the board ahead of each board meeting. Usually it's our chair and vice chair, and then any board member who would like to have a regular check-in ahead of the board meeting. So, that's also something I'm more than happy to offer up, is a kind of a regular check-in ahead of the voting meeting to walk through the agenda, understand, what we're trying to accomplish. All right, so let's jump in then. Maybe actually it might be helpful, just because I don't know if everybody here knows each other. Why don't we do a very, very quick round of intros? Why don't we start with EBCE staff? So exit full screen. Melissa, you are at the top of my screen, so why don't you quickly
Yep.
Here you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Brandt. I am EBCE's Senior Director of Public Policy and Deputy General Counsel. I manage the regulatory and legislative functions, and I've been at EBCE for a little bit over 3 years now.
Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Smith. I am Nick and Howard's assistant. So, and I'm going to be helping out in this sort of transitional phase with Adrian. And you'll probably hear from me for scheduling needs and things like that. So some of you I recognized. Hi, Elisa. And yeah, excited to meet y'all.
What do you want, Scooby?
Why don't I just jump in and go next? My name is Howard Chang. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of EBCE and the Board Appointed Treasurer. And I joined shortly after Nick and Stephanie, so I have pretty good knowledge of our history, really focused on sort of the finance and power procurement areas on my day-to-day.
I'll go. I'm Stephanie Cabrera. I am the current clerk of the board, but as Nick mentioned, I will be leaving after next week. I leave you in fully capable hands, and Adrian will be taking the helm.
Hi, my name is Adrian Bankhead. I'll be taking over or stepping into Stephanie's shoes as board clerk for a little while, and I'm happy to meet all of you.
Hi, I'm Annie Henderson. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Account Services. So that oversees everything from our social media and website to billing operations and then public engagement, which Alex has been leading up and has been in touch with all of you. So welcome. We're excited to work with you.
Assuming I'm last left. Hi, everybody. Alex DeGiorgio, Public Engagement Manager, an occasional unintentional court jester. I work on Annie's team, as she mentioned. My primary role with the agency is interfacing with our local government staff members or our partners at our cities and the county, as well as local elected leaders such as yourselves, and assisting with community outreach in general. I'm very excited to have you here. Thanks. I've been with the agency for about a year and a half.
Hey, well, I think that's everybody. Board members, why, you know what? Why don't we? I want to be cognizant of time. Why don't we all jump in? And at the end, maybe we can have a quick. I'm sure everyone's going to have questions, so maybe when you ask a question, that might be a good chance to just give a quick intro of yourself. And if we miss anyone, then we can do that at the end. But again, we have a lot of content here I want to run through. So let's do it. All right. So our history. So EBCE has only been operating for, I guess, 2.5 years, coming on 3 years for commercial customers. So June 2018 is when we launched service. But it's an agency that has been being worked on for quite some time. So it was in 2015 that the county initiated a feasibility study to assess primarily the financial feasibility of launching a new energy agency. After that feasibility study, there was an extensive and extended community input process. Over 40 different members of the public and elected officials were part of the steering committee that met many, many times. I was not yet part of the agency at that time, so I missed out on that. But Alex is a font of knowledge because he was on the steering committee. So if you ever have questions about the early days of EBCE, Alex is Alex is the person to go to. The JPA was formed in the beginning of 2017, and when formed was signed by the initial 12 members, all Alameda County cities and the county. And then we started serving our customers in 2018, June 2018. In the winter and spring of 2018 is where we made a lot of the initial decisions around the discount we would offer, the types of energy products we currently are offering. So right now we have 3 products, a product that is less expensive than PG&E, a product that is 100% carbon free and priced at the same price as PG&E, and then 100% renewable. But if you're ever so inclined to understand kind of some of the early background for some of the decisions that were made, those board agendas from the winter and fall of 2018 are chock full of info and background and context. So we launched in June 2018 to commercial and municipal accounts, and then to residential customers in November 2018, and have been serving those segments ever since. We serve roughly 95% of customers who are eligible for our service. In 2019, we initiated an expansion to serve the cities of Tracy, Pleasanton, and Newark. They all joined our JPA towards the end of 2019, and we will commence service to those 3 new communities in April of this year. Next slide, please. So our service now will encompass all of Alameda County, but for the city of Alameda. And the reason we do not serve the city of Alameda is because it is a public utility. So the city of Alameda owns and operates both the power lines, but also buys the electric generation for the city of Alameda. And so because they are not part of the PG&E system, they have not been eligible to participate in East Bay Community Energy Service. But apart from that, we now serve, or will be soon here, serving the entirety of the county, and are establishing a foothold in the city of Tracy. We serve probably around 1.6, 1.7 million residents and businesses. That's roughly 650,000 accounts, and it's an electric load of 5.8 million megawatt hours. You're going to be hearing a lot more energy terminology, megawatts and megawatt hours, kilowatts and kilowatt hours, both today and going forward. We're not today actually going to be going into sort of an in-depth energy 101, but we will have a number of energy education opportunities in the coming months. We do an annual deep dive on energy procurement and energy markets. And we will also be doing some more higher level education around how the energy system works, but that's not the goal today. Next slide, please. So what Community Choice and what EBC does is we buy electricity. First and foremost, we buy electricity wholesale, and then we resell that wholesale electricity to our retail customers. That energy is bought from a variety of sources: wind power, solar power, hydroelectric power, and then we buy a fair amount of our power from the energy market. So it's not from a specified source. It's not from a specific power plant, but those unspecified purchases tend to primarily derive from natural gas. Those purchases that we make, we buy them centrally, and then the electricity is delivered to our customers over the PG&E power line. And then the customer pays 2 bills. They're both on the PG&E bill, but they pay a transmission and distribution delivery charge and then they pay an electric generation charge to EBCE. I think the easiest way to understand the way the system works is to consider a pool, a swimming pool. So instead of when we buy, say, from even a local solar project or a local wind project, we have a wind farm that we're building in the Altamont Pass. That electricity doesn't necessarily directly serve our customers. Instead, the electricity we buy goes into this central swimming pool, and then we pull out the electricity that we need to serve our customers at the time of their consumption from that same pool. So when we're thinking about how much renewable energy we have or how much clean energy have, we look at sort of an annual accounting. So if over the course of the year we used 5 million megawatt hours and our goal is to be 40% renewable, we need to inject, so we pulled 5 million megawatt hours out of the pool, we need to inject 2 million megawatt hours of renewable energy into that pool in that year to be able to hit our 40% target. Next slide, please. We currently offer our customers 3 products. And this is part of the differentiation from, say, a PG&E, where there's one main product and then there's some limited additional options that are available. We have 3 products that are available to all customers. Well, 2 products are available to all customers right now, and we have a 3rd product that we will be closing in 2021. So it actually is somewhat limited at the time for the time being. So that first product is Bright Choice. Sorry, someone's banging on the door here. The first product is Bright Choice, which is the product that 85 to 90% of our customers are on, and that product offers more renewable energy than what PG&E offers customers at a lower rate. So currently, we offer a product that's 5% more renewable and 1% less expensive. Sorry. Our second product, Brilliant 100, is 100% clean energy. So that's a mix of renewable energy and hydroelectric, and that's priced at parity with PG&E. This is the rate that actually is going to close at the end of this year. So because we're closing it and we're going to be looking to develop a new 3rd product, it is currently only available to existing customers and customers in our 3 new communities. So the communities of Pleasanton, Newark, and Tracy. And then finally is Renewable 100. And this product is 100% California wind and solar. And it's priced at 1 penny a kilowatt hour more than PG&E's rate. And let me actually maybe speak to one more point. While all of our customers have the choice to select between these 3 products, each one of our cities has the ability to set a different default. So for instance, last night, the city of Dublin changed its default for residential customers from Bright Choice to Renewable 100. So once that goes into effect, EBC will automatically switch all residential customers in Dublin to this Renewable 100 product. And so this is, again, oh, yes, Preston Jordan.
So I'll introduce myself, Preston Jordan, new council member in Albany. Thank you very much. I am the alternate, I should clarify. Councilmember Tiedemann, who is also on the call or in the meeting, is the primary. Yeah, I was curious about the default. So when a jurisdiction changes its default selection, does that change only apply to the accounts that have not affirmatively made a selection? So for instance, if an account holder has affirmatively chosen a different EBC product, or has affirmatively chosen to go to PG&E, then the default does not impact them. I've always been curious how that works. Thank you very much.
So we don't have, I think, a specific policy that is, because we actually have not, the Dublin's default change will be the first time we are implementing a new default product after launch. So, it's a bit of an open question and, subject to really input from the city. Though I think our staff recommendation would be if a customer has affirmatively decided to opt into a rate other than the default, our recommendation would be to not change that default, not change that customer's rate if we change the default rate, under the premise that a customer made a proactive decision, especially for residential customers. Few residential customers actually proactively make a decision to change their product. And so if they did that, we want to make sure that we're being respectful of that consumer decision. For PG&E, if someone has opted out of our service, then it has no impact because they're not our customer. Yep.
Follow-up question, if I may. So the state legislation from many years ago that enabled the creation of CCAs, as it were. So it basically allows jurisdictions to override those selections by individuals as often as they want.
It's silent on the topic, right? There's no explicit regulation or law that says they can or they cannot. The only law is that customers have to be able to change, right? So a customer has to be allowed to opt out. And that sort of becomes the lever the customer has. If a city is constantly changing their default or defaulting them back, the customer can choose to default back to PG&E if they don't like that.
Thanks so much for clearing that up. I appreciate it.
I think I was speaking to the default. So as I was saying, cities have the ability to elect defaults. Generally, as a policy, that election should occur, can occur anytime throughout the year, but we try to implement these changes once a year at the beginning of the year, the calendar year. And that's largely because as you change the default, it's going to change the power mix that we need to procure for customers. And so we want to know going into a calendar year what we need to buy for those customers. So, we're not making a commitment that we're 100% renewable, but we're not in a position to be able to procure enough renewables to meet that customer commitment. Next slide, please. This is an example of the customer bill, and this certainly can be one of the biggest customer service challenges that we face, particularly when we're going into a new community. Is really helping our customers understand their bill. PG&E's bill to start with is already hard enough to understand, and then when you layer on top of that EBC generation charges, and it creates an added level of complexity. So what I would actually suggest, instead of me going through these here, is we have
Hey, Nick.
Yeah, Annie.
Sorry, This is Annie Henderson. I just wanted to jump in. This is a very busy slide. We did not expect everyone to be able to absorb this information. So there is a link to how to calculate your savings. There's also there's a page on our site with the full bill and all of the explanations, but still it's a lot of information. So I wanted to put out there that we are happy to do a follow-on to this orientation that is just understanding your bill. This is something that we've done quite a bit with the existing service territories. For the new service territories, this is going to be the focus of our outreach post enrollment. So as people start to see EBCE on the bill, so we're looking to like May, June to start doing an Understanding Your Bill tour. So if there are any local organizations you would like us to partner with to get that word out, we're happy to do it. But it is pretty, it can be very complex. Most PG&E bills are 6 to 8 pages long. Only 1 page of that has to do with EBCE, but it's a lot to explain to customers. So we can do a follow-up training.
So that's what I was going to allude to is we do a robust explaining your bill as part of our customer enrollment. I don't know if it will be a full, in the past, it was literally a tour. You know, we had EBC staff traveling around to libraries and senior centers and the like, actually doing a explain your bill walkthrough. But that's something we'd be happy to set up for board members, just so you understand how the bill works, because invariably, you know, your residents will ask you about it. We also have some online resources to that effect that I'll make sure. Alex, can you make sure to send some links to the existing Explain Your Bill resources that we have? I know we have it on our website to the group.
Certainly.
I have a question, please.
Yeah.
So, hi, my name is Karina Lopez. I'm representing the city of San Leandro. I have been with this effort even before it was formed as a JPA as the city's representative many years ago when this is still a concept. So I've been there sort of, and I see some familiar faces in the room, and that was there from the very beginning as well. And so I look forward to working with all of you. So the question is, you know, I just triggered, and you may be going through this later on in the presentation, but because there's a possibility that even board members would be confused by this bill, which I admittedly have always been. I would presume that the public at large would be, so perhaps this should be a future conversation that I'm planting a seed here, is that if we're gonna have some sort of onboarding on the bill itself, perhaps there should be some sort of material put out officially by EBCEs for the public to understand this, and my desire would be that that would be in a multiplicity of languages as well. So I know that a lot of folks are looking for ways to do that, which I would add that perhaps to the table. Additionally, since we're doing things virtually, you know, we have to also be mindful that there are people who are not digitally included as well. And so I still support, you know, going out into the field, of course, when things are safer. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that call out. You know, I think a lot of what you're referring to is included in the Explaining Your Bill materials. And we do have that in multiple languages. And we've done some our Explain Your Bill events in multiple languages. Obviously now it's a different dynamic to be able to go out and do these events in person. But you know, I think it continually is something that we try to work on and provide more resources, because, you know, to your point, I'm looking at this bill, you know, even now, and there are facets of it that you know, that I struggle with, and you know, on the fly, trying to explain exactly what the generation credit versus the power charge and different, you know, these are challenges. So you know, I take that point, and it's definitely something that you know, we will continue to provide more and more resources for you as board members, but also for consumers. Now, you know, sort of going from kind of the very, very high level of what we do and the products we offer, I want to speak a bit to some of the major board decisions that are that, you know, we've made in the last year and will be making you know, in the next year. So in 2020 was quite busy, from a policy perspective for EBCE. In December, we made a decision to set a 100% clean energy by 2030 goal for EBCE. So today, our primary goal is to be 5% for our primary product is to be 5% more renewable than PG&E. And, in any given year, PG&E, is going to be a little bit above the renewable portfolio standard. So, practically speaking, that means in 2021, we expect that our renewable and clean energy levels will be, 50, 60, in the 50s or 60% level. So, there will be 30 to 40% of our energy that will not be from a clean source. What we did here, though, is say by 2030, 100% of our energy does need to come from clean sources. On an ongoing basis, we engage very actively with the state legislature. Electricity in particular is a highly regulated sector. With multiple state agencies having jurisdiction, and it's also an area because of the economic effects and also the environmental effects that is of great interest to the state legislature. And so in any given year, you may have 50, 60, 70 pieces of legislation that directly affect what we do. And so each year we approve a legislative program. It's something that you will all be very familiar with your cities. You set a legislative agenda that sets high level goals, and then your staff or you individually may be focused on going and executing that. That's the same approach we take at EBCE. We each year set a roadmap for our customer programs. For any of you who have been involved in this program for any meaningful time, you'll know that one of the major priorities is local investment and local development. And what that often means is investing in local clean energy resources and in programs like energy efficiency that both help customers save on their energy bills and create local economic development and job creation. And actually, at our board meeting next month, we will be providing a mid-year update on our local development activities. So you'll have a firsthand view of all the local development work that's ongoing. And then going into the budget setting process, that's where we start to set priorities for the following year for our local development. In marketing and account services, we annually review our value proposition. And we think of our rates are really our value proposition, and as articulated as the difference between what we charge our customers and what PG&E charges its customers. So for Bright Choice, 1% discount, that's our value proposition. And as part of the budget setting process, we also review and consider any possible changes to our value proposition. This year, we are also undergoing a transition for residential customers to time of use pricing. So the vast majority of residential electricity consumers are charged on a volume basis. So the more energy you use, the price increases. So, for the first 100 units, you're charged 10 cents, the next 100 units, 20, next 130, next 140. And the premise of that approach is to encourage people to conserve, to use less energy. The state has made a policy decision to move away from that volumetric approach to pricing electricity for residential customers towards time of use. So that instead of it being these tiers that go up as you use more, it will be based on the time of day. So you might have electricity costs 10 cents in the morning, 15 cents in the middle of the day, and 25 cents in the evening. And one of the rationales for that also is to encourage customers to use energy when it's costs least to generate, which also generally means when we're getting the most renewable energy, and use less during those times when it's more expensive to generate and it's more likely to be sourced from natural gas. We have also put in place an arrearage management plan, as I'm sure you're all observing with your cities. A lot of folks are. Kate Harrison, I see you have a question.
Thank you very much, Nick. I had a question back a minute ago about the local development plan. If a city has an idea about something that might feed into renewable energy, for example, if we decided we wanted to talk to you about putting up wind turbines at the waterfront in Berkeley, how do we do that? How do we fold in new ideas to the local development plan?
So we meet, EBC staff meet monthly with the staff of all of our member jurisdictions through, it's a group that's convened by Stop Waste. And so that typically is where we gather input from our cities, just about sort of the day-to-day operational topics. Certainly there's always an opportunity for discussions from you, Kate, with me, with our staff. If there's a specific idea, just let us know, and we're always available to have a conversation. But we do have that regular cadence of dialogue with all of our cities.
Great, thank you very much.
So to the arrearage management plan, as I was saying, I'm sure you all are observing in your cities, residents struggling to pay bills, garbage bills, water bills, electricity bills. So to help manage this, the state of California has put in place a program that EBC is going to be participating in, where if a customer signs up and they're able to make 12 on-time payments, any arrears that they will have at the time of sign up will be written off. So as an example, you have a customer that has not been able to pay their bill for the last 12 months, or part of their bill, they may owe $1,500. If they sign up in this program and then for the next 12 months, they pay their bill on time, that $1,500 debt will be written off. Hey, Alex, could you just take over, or Annie on new inclusion? I have to go. As I said, there's somebody here to pick up my dog, so I have to just let the dog out.
Sure. So on the inclusion of new communities, as far as board decisions go, when new jurisdictions go through the process to join.
Alex, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. You're kind of muffled. Sorry.
Thanks. Can you hear me now?
Oh, Alex.
Not really.
It's very muffled. Do you want to try calling in from your cell, and I'll just continue to walk through the slide till you're back?
Sure, sorry about that.
Thanks. All right, so just following up on Alex's comments. So recent decision from the board, of course, was to accept new JPA members. That actually happened at the end of 2019. 2020 continues to be the year that was lost. So we have to let the CPUC know a year in advance of new community enrollment. We did that. We approved a new implementation plan. The board approved a new implementation plan. And then most recently, we made some updates to our terms and conditions of service to include these new communities, to accept their selection of default products. Pleasanton will be having a vote on that next month to determine what their default product would be. And so that recently occurred. And as part of that decision, it was decided that though Brilliant 100 is closed to new customers in our initial service territory. It would be an available option to customers in the new service territories. However, we still intend to make some changes to that product to be determined by the end of this year. So we'll be following up with all communities to talk about what they would like to do with Brilliant 100, especially the cities of Albany and Hayward, where that is their default. For the next item, the Ordinance of Uniform Public Construction Cost Act. Stephanie, I might turn it over to you to speak to this one, as it is more of a sort of administrative ordinance that was recently passed by our board.
Apologies, that was via Nick question for that ordinance.
Okay.
Right, I'm
it's
back.
Quite possible that, okay. So we are at the UPCCAA ordinance, Nick.
I would not actually characterize this as a major board decision. This is a compliance with Public Construction Cost Act, so this is fairly standard that, you know, for every public agency doesn't have a major effect on our board operations. So Julie Testa, I see a hand raised. Councilmember Testa?
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. I was kind of getting in line for after the comments, but if I can interrupt, I really did need to understand the Brilliant 100 is being closed to new enrollment. Is that, I didn't quite understand that. I'm Vice Mayor from Pleasanton, and we are going to be next week voting on this, and we currently are considering Brilliant 100 as our partial default. So it's closed to enrollment? That isn't an option now? Did I misunderstand?
It is not to our new communities. So it is not closed to residents of Pleasanton, Newark, or Tracy.
Okay. All right. So it's not a concern for us. I apologize for the interruption, and thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. All right, next slide, please. So, you know, now is getting to the good stuff. I would say, you know, when EBC was formed, it was really with three co-equal goals in mind: save consumers money, invest in more clean energy projects, and invest in Alameda County. And so, you know, we're really proud of, you know, in the 2.5 years that we've been operating, in our track record in achieving all three. So far, in our short history of operations, we have signed contracts for 550 megawatts of new wind and solar. That is roughly enough energy to serve 100,000 homes. As part of many of those projects, we're building batteries. And, you know, that's largely because, you know, as you get to a saturation, particularly of solar, we just don't need any more clean energy in the middle of the day. When you need it is later in the day when the sun isn't shining. And so we have been actively building batteries with our solar projects to be able to shift the clean energy from the middle of the day to the evening, both when natural gas is most likely to be used, but also when prices are highest. So it's both an environmental and an economic benefit. From a customer savings perspective, we have saved Alameda County residents over $20 million since we launched in 2018, and $10 million last year. This picture you have of this solar project is our first renewable energy project that started operating last month. Next slide, please. Okay, well, this is good reference documents for folks to have, but I won't dwell on these. These links are certainly all good links to have, and I think you have this presentation. So I particularly encourage everyone to take a little bit of time on the local development business plan. And I think those are all the slides. The rest are reference slides, right? Here's our org chart. Next slide. Yeah, so now let's get into the board mechanics. So we have obviously our main board of 15 members. Then we have an executive committee that consists of 5 members of the board that always includes our chair and vice chair. Currently there are 2 vacancies to the executive committee. We have 2 active subcommittees. One is a finance, administration, and procurement subcommittee, and the second is a marketing, regulatory, and legislative subcommittee. I believe in both cases, there are both committees have yet to be.
I can take this.
The reappointments have yet to be made to the subcommittees, and so that's something that our chair Dan Kalb will be, and our vice chair Diane Martinez will be working with you all to do. I think there is some conversation perhaps about folding the scope of the marketing, regulatory, and legislative subcommittee into the executive committee, because we have tended to find that they are overlapping presentations. And then we have a community advisory committee. This was one of the core decisions that was made early in our program, which was to really prioritize community engagement at the board level and in organizational decision making. Our community advisory committee has been operating as long as our board, as long as the agency has been in place. And the chair of the community advisory committee sits as an ex officio member on the board of the full board. And so that means that they participate in our business meetings during in-person meeting times. The chair of the CAC would sit at the dais with the rest of the board. The only real difference is they do not have a vote on board agenda matters. Currently, actually, we have quite a few openings on the CAC. The decision was made at the end of last year to expand the CAC and also to link seats on the CAC to specific geographies. So we did find ourselves quite constant. Our current CAC is quite concentrated in North and Central Alameda County. We don't currently have a CAC member from the Tri-Valley or from the city of Tracy, and we only have one CAC member from the Tri-City areas. So to try to more equitably allocate seats and to get a more broad and diverse participation, we are opening up the CAC for new applicants. We have 5 vacancies and then 10 alternate vacancies, so potentially up to 15 new members of the CAC. And the current vacancies are 2 openings for the Tri-Valley, 2 for the Tri-City area, and 1 for the city of Tracy. That's right, Stephanie? Okay. So for our new members from Pleasanton and Livermore, in particular, we highly encourage you, and you'll be hearing from Alex and from me with more information, but we highly encourage you to reach out to your communities and encourage residents to apply to participate in our CAC. They do have meetings once a month virtually, much like our current virtual meetings, though I think we are evaluating if there's a way for us to have our CAC meetings meet virtually for the duration. One thing we found is virtual meetings, especially for the CAC, really make participation a lot easier for folks from all around the county. So instead of having to drive once a month to say Hayward, you can go home and log on. Yes, Councilmember Kick.
I would just say that I think trying to get these to continue to be virtual would be fantastic. The East County definitely struggles with participating in larger county programs because it is quite a drive. And then when you're considering trying to have equitable access to these commissions, lower income folks who may not have great transit, it makes it more difficult. So whatever we can do to help keep those virtual, I will be reaching out to our community to try and get some applicants from Livermore. But when would we find out how permanent that might be? I don't want to recruit someone and then have them say, well, I have to quit now because there's no way I can get out to Hayward regularly.
So the primary consideration there is the Brown Act. So I think left to our own devices, we would absolutely move to 100% virtual. I think there are some open questions that we're evaluating about whether a standing committee that does vote can meet virtually. Now, there are votes, but they're not, they're votes to make recommendations. They're not votes on, say, allocating funds. So I think there's definitely, we believe there's space under the current law to allow these meetings to be virtual on an ongoing basis.
Fantastic, thanks. I know we're looking at that state legislation around the Brown Act for virtual meetings as well for other reasons over here. So I'll just keep an eye out.
Okay. The only other thing I'll say is participation in our board, on our boards and committees, both does come with it a $100 per meeting stipend. So our meetings are currently held at 5 p.m. The third Wednesday of each month. We have the first Wednesday of the month reserved more as a formality, because in a situation where we would have to hold a special meeting, there are limits on the kinds of decisions you can make in a special meeting. Whereas if you have a standing meeting that you just cancel every time, you don't face those same limitations. And so I would say that third Wednesday is absolutely the meeting that should be reserved on your calendar, and you'll be getting calendar invites from us. I would not reserve the first Wednesday. It would only be in an emergency, and it would be based on ability of the board members to meet that we would hold the meeting. As you probably are experiencing in all your committees and in your councils, these meetings are held by Zoom, and our closed sessions are held in Google Hangouts. Okay. Board approvals. This is all stuff that, again, I think you will be very familiar with, because it aligns with a lot of your responsibilities for other regional boards. The board approves officers. Currently, I am the only officer of the agency, but at some point, we may hire a general counsel, so that individual would be an officer. the board oversees any changes to the joint powers agreement, inclusion of community, agency finances of the adoption of the budget, adoption of the value proposition, and approval of any contract over $100,000. Below $100,000, approval is delegated to me, but I am obligated to report on every contract that we execute the following month in as an agenda item. The board also is very involved in issues of policy, and certainly if we were to ever issue a bond or terminate the program, those would be decisions of the board. Next slide, please. So upcoming activities. So we are, as I have said, we are enrolling 3 new communities in April. The first notifications will commence in February. Those notifications will be paper. They'll be mailed to all customers, and thereafter customers will receive either a mix of email and mail depending on whether or not we have the customer email. 2 of our 3 new communities have selected Bright Choice as their default, and the city of Pleasanton is making that decision next week. As part of that enrollment process, we typically would do lots of community outreach, going to farmers markets and fairs and, all the events that would typically happen. Obviously, that's not happening this year. So there's a real emphasis on direct outreach to community groups, and holding Zooms and webinars for various community groups that are spheres of influence, working with city and staff to do outreach through your channels, and then doing digital and physical sort of brand awareness and advertising, through channels like Facebook and Nextdoor and the like. Next slide, please. As we talked about earlier, every city has the ability to set different defaults. So here you see all the various defaults that are out there. Most of our communities have defaulted to Bright Choice, but for instance, the city of Dublin is changing its residential default. City of Piedmont, for the vast majority of its consumers, is already on Renewable 100. And then Albany and Hayward are on Brilliant 100, but they're going to have to consider what new default they may want to set for 2022. Next slide, please. A hallmark of what EBC does, in addition to sort of our core business activity, which is buying and selling electricity, are the customer programs that we offer. And our first, and I would say our marquee program that we're currently offering is what we call Resilient Home. And it is a program that provides financial incentives to residential customers, and at some point in the future, commercial and municipal customers, to install solar and storage on their home or apartment building. And these batteries provide both backup in, say, a situation where there is a PG&E power shutoff, but they also are available to EBCE to help meet our energy obligation, say during that evening period when power prices are very high. We have the ability to benefit from the batteries when they discharge their solar onto the grid. And that is a program that is sized to provide incentives to roughly 2,000 residents currently. We're also working, as I alluded to, with many of your cities on a program to similarly deploy solar and batteries on municipal critical facilities. And so, you know, I would expect that over the coming months, you may see at your council some information about that program as well. Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, thank you. I should introduce myself before. I'm Kate Harrison from Berkeley, and I was the alternate to the EBC in the prior 2 years. I had a question about the solar plus battery for customers. Is that only available if someone doesn't already have solar? Can someone just get a battery through that, or they need to be wanting to do both at this point?
You have to have solar, either existing or a new system.
Okay.
We're not yet offering it to existing solar systems because the vendor that we selected to roll out this program has been doing some internal product development to allow them to pair their battery system with a solar system they didn't install. So our hope is that within the next few months, we'll start being able to offer that.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Kavanaugh. Oh, you're muted.
Hi there, Councilmember Kavanaugh from Piedmont. We haven't figured out our, sorry, I'm on 2 devices, so I'm getting feedback here. All right, so we haven't figured out our assignments going forward, but I have been the alternate. Quick questions. One, I'm wondering what kind of incentives we offer for residences to upgrade their electricity. Just as an example, in our home, our utilities are undergrounded, and we're looking at $10,000 to $20,000 in fees just to upgrade our panel. So I'm interested in, for residents who are trying to get on board, what we can do to ease the burden so that they can upgrade the capacity at their household level. And then also perhaps it's your municipal solar on critical facilities. We just did a major school reconstruction project, and unfortunately they had to cost optimize the program, and what they took out was solar, unfortunately, and they're looking at $375,000 to implement solar on the building. And I'm interested to know, obviously we have a huge incentive that we want to get that done as well. And I'm wondering what we can do through EBCE and other programs to help make those kind of things happen.
So we do not have currently an incentive that we offer for main panel upgrades. It's definitely an issue that we're aware of and a major limiting factor for both installing solar, but also electrifying the home, buying an electric vehicle. So there, and I'll defer to my colleague JP if he wants to speak to that. Actually, JP, why don't you finish that question and then also take over the last couple bullet points on this slide. I know that was
yeah, happy to, Nick. Thanks for passing that over. And hi all, I'm JP Ross. I'm our Vice President of Local Development, Electrification, and Innovation. And just joined you for this slide, and happy to answer that question. I think the first part of the question with respect to city facilities, we are looking at helping our cities procure solar and storage for critical facilities, as well as solar on its own for non-critical and other facilities. And so we are in communication with our existing cities, and we'll soon be in communication with our new enrollees. Welcome aboard. About the opportunity to join up in that. School districts are, in many of our cities, not directly under the auspices and account management of the city, so they're slightly parallel in some cases. So we're kind of taking that the school districts specifically on a case-by-case basis, whether or not they're in the city or not. But as we learn to deliver these solutions to our cities, we certainly plan to scale and expand beyond just municipal accounts as we make this model work. So certainly interested to talk about the opportunities there. On the second question around service panel upgrades, this is something that we've been looking at and have been thinking about because it's a substantial barrier to electrification, at residential, multifamily residential, single family, as well as commercial accounts. We have been talking with PG&E about it, as well as thinking about some workforce development opportunities that we might be able to leverage to get some funding in to try to basically pilot service panel upgrade process. We don't actually own the service panel. The utility, owns the distribution system up to the service panel, and then the customer owns the service panel. But how we can get over that barrier to electrification is certainly a problem we're looking to help to try to solve. As you're well aware, in your case, the undergrounding of the service is quite expensive to replace. And if we think about an individual customer who wants to replace a water heater or install an EV charger or replace some other device with an electrical option, if they face a large upgrade cost of their service panel, then they'll tend to just kick that down the road, install a new gas device, and then we've got more gas in the building for 10 to 20 years. So trying to get over that barrier of service panel upgrade costs is definitely something we're looking at. A couple things I wanted to highlight. We do have 4 people on our team, and we're mostly implementing programs that were outlined through our local development business plan, which was a community engagement process that EBCE went through to kind of develop this initial portfolio of programs that we're executing on. So Nick talked about our resilience programs. We are also working on energy efficiency. We have 3 pilots that are currently running right now for low-income residential and commercial customers. And that's getting us experience in the energy efficiency space while we develop an approach to capture some available public utilities funding, some state funding that's already collected from our customers, but right now administered through other parties like PG&E. We want to capture some of that funding so that we can add to our budget and run more programs, more energy efficiency programs for our customers. So our pilots are helping us work through that. We also have a portfolio of transportation electrification activities. The first one we kicked off is our municipal fleet electrification assistance program. So many of your cities have fleet electrification goals. And then more recently, with Governor Newsom's plan to not allow for internal combustion engines to be sold in California after 2035, there's certainly a requirement to think about electrification. So we want to help you do that. And we're helping many of our cities work through that process now. And then we will also be working on how to develop the charging infrastructure and doing that with you, similar to how we are engaging in the procurement process for municipal solar and storage. And then we also have been awarded a 2021, which will really be delivered late 21, 22, a California electric vehicle incentive grant by the California Energy Commission. So we have allocated about $16 million over 4 years for EV infrastructure. We're going to put about $3 million of that into this California Electric Vehicle Incentive Grant Program, and then the CEC is going to give us $14.5 million. So we get a really good leveraging value from the money that we're putting into that program, and that will help to deploy, multiples of that amount of money, because there's private money that comes in on top of the public money to deliver DC fast chargers and level 2 chargers into Alameda County. So that's a big part of what we are working on. And our focus with the electric vehicle incentive program grants has been to identify locations around our multi-unit and multifamily dwellings, of which we have many, because we know that that renters and people who live in multifamily housing face some more challenges again, that prohibit or slow their adoption of electric vehicles. So we're making sure that that the funding for these chargers is being targeted towards those hotspots that we've identified. And the last major area of work for us is our building decarbonization work. So we have already initiated an electric heat pump hot water heater incentive program. We are incentivizing $1,000 for a resident to upgrade their water heater from gas to electric. And then there's another incentive offered by BayREN that is combined. So customers can get $2,000 in public funding for upgrading their hot water heater and stopping burning natural gas in their homes. And then we're also doing a lot of work on induction cooking, education, and some grants. The push to electrification is extremely important, and indoor cooking and indoor burning of natural gas actually creates some air pollution challenges in our homes and businesses. But people love their gas cooktops, and people have a noted hesitance to going with electric cooking because they think it's the old radiant coil cooktops that don't work very well. So we're doing some work to educate people, businesses, and residents about the benefits of induction cooking. And one of those is a video that we've recently filmed and have a partnership with Sunset Magazine to produce and get out to our customers. And we actually think that'll have some good impact across the state, but we've got an Alameda County focus program on induction cooking and education and grants. So we are doing a more in-depth review of our programs at the coming board meeting this January. So you'll get a much better look at our programs and our team, but wanted to give you a brief update today and happy to answer any questions if there's time.
I did have one question, and that is that in Berkeley, we're looking at eliminating parking minimums from all new construction, which would sort of imply that there won't be any charging stations in new buildings because there won't be any parking. So I'm just hoping as we look at this partnership with us on charging that we're also considering street level charging stations, because we're going to be probably reducing our parking envelope quite significantly.
Yeah, and I think early adopters in the EV space have done a lot of charging at home, but traditionally people don't charge up or fuel up their gas vehicles at their home. So the build out of charging stations that are fast, economical, and allow people to step in and get a full tank in a short period of time is definitely where a lot of our focus is, and that really provides charging to the community as opposed to an individual.
This is Preston. I had a question. The $3 million for EV, $3 million of local funding for EV leveraged to $14.5 million, I think I heard from CPUC. Is that for providing subsidies for the EV itself, or is that strictly all for charging infrastructure?
The electric vehicle incentive program is all for charging. And so it's all for publicly available charging as well as fleet charging. So it's not incentives for a single family homeowner to install a charger at their home. It will all be for public charging.
And does a multi-residence building qualify as public?
Yeah.
Okay. Some other questions, because that was a lot of material. Thank you very much for that tour through the programs. So EBC and BayREN offer electric heat pump water heater subsidies. I've been trying to figure out what is the area, policy area, energy area within which BayREN works versus EBCE and all the CCAs. It's kind of confusing for me as a lay person, so I don't know if you could speak to that a bit.
Yeah. So you're not alone. And we have had some conversations with Bayren and Stop Waste around coordination, overlap and where we are best kind of suited to fill the gaps. I think one major difference is that Bayren is really across the Bay Area counties, and they then administer programs through affiliates that are within a specific county. So Stop Waste does a lot of the Bayren funded work in Alameda County. And so, I think there is definitely some overlap there. They've got a little bit more focused on kind of codes and standards and some policy work that we haven't been doing so much. And, but they also administer some energy efficiency programs with PUC funding. So we're well aware of that overlap. They've been given a slightly more flexible mandate around the cost effectiveness of their energy efficiency program. So like their Bambi program is specifically focused on hard to reach and is not therefore required to be cost effective, whereas our energy efficiency programs will actually have to build a cost effective portfolio. So there is some separation there around two different programs serving two different needs. So I agree that there's some overlap there. It's a little cloudy. When I came on board a couple of years ago, that was one of the first questions that I was trying to resolve. And we've had quite a lot of meetings with both Stop Waste and Bayren to make sure that our programs are synergistic and there's not a lot of overlap or kind of administrative duplication. I will say, I think it's an ongoing conversation around how best to maneuver in this space.
So I'm gonna, if I could take a little more time, put maybe a little finer point on this, because you mentioned piloting programs, and I've been talking to Bayren staff, and Bayren talks about piloting potential programs that could then scale up regionally as being within its charter, its DNA, if you will. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and we can take it outside of this meeting, the Albany voters in the last election provided $200,000 to $300,000 in new revenue specifically recommended to be spent on greenhouse pollution reduction. And so building electrification is, the voters didn't define, it wasn't in the measure, but building electrification at this point in time might be one of the best uses for that money. And it might be interesting to use that money to pilot something in Albany. And so I don't know which agency is the better one to take that on or to talk to in that regard.
So talk to us. I think, one of the lenses that we are really viewing all of this electrification on is through kind of a procurement and climate neutral lens. So, we would expect that our electricity sales will double to triple with full electrification. So that's a huge procurement growth. And, when we look at our carbon-free generation resources, there's times you really want to have more charging coming online, like the middle of the day, and times where you really don't want more load to come online. So as we're thinking about electrification, we really need to think about how we deploy it, not only time of day, but when different technologies are deployed according to the growth rate of things like batteries and longer duration storage, as well as how cost effectively we can procure the generation to meet that load. And so there's a huge opportunity with electrification, but I think we need to be thinking about it as how do we procure carbon neutral generation to meet that new load, and how do we message that, and what are the controls we bring online as we develop that new electrification, so that we're not building out lots of afternoon summer peaking load before we have the resources to provide service to that load.
Thank you. It sounds like maybe a joint meeting with EBC staff and Bayren/Stop Waste staff would be useful to continue the conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. We had one just a couple weeks ago, and I think we're certainly thinking about that as well.
Okay, and in that regard, I'm Albany's representative to Stop Waste/Energy Council, and the council is directed Councilmember Tiedemann, who's Albany's representative to this body, and myself to try to coordinate between the agencies. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
We also have a question from
Hi.
Lopez.
Thank you so much. It seems that, based on my colleagues' interests and as well as my own, but I don't want to go into the details for just as a courtesy to the rest of the folks on this call. I think going into the weeds might be more appropriate at a general or a regular meeting of the body and having, some time and some placeholders for the various jurisdictions to share what's going on locally in their jurisdictions and how that might be additive to programs. I think that would be in order.
Yeah, I think that's good. Just so that you're aware, we do have a monthly meeting that's hosted at Stop Waste, which is our technical advisory group.
JP, I gave some feedback, some background on that already.
Okay, so that's one opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm not looking. Yeah, no. I'm looking for something to our body at our meeting. Because I think this is a long conversation. I think that there are a lot of people who are very interested in these programs. There are reserves that could go towards additional funding of programs, including pilots that were discussed earlier. I'd like to have this more robust conversation at one of our board meetings in the near future.
Okay, great.
Councilmember Lopez, we actually have that on the agenda for our next board meeting. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Great.
So we every
Thank
6
you very
months
much for that.
Every 6 months we provide or every quarter there's an update on local development activity, and then every 6 months there's a much more in-depth
Thank
meeting.
you. I'll reserve myself for that meeting then. Thank you.
Okay.
But my reason for bringing up the TAG meeting is to say that we have a monthly interaction with staff and are happy to engage, through staff up to a subcommittee meeting or a full board meeting if there's a request. Of course, we're also always available through the board meetings to take a request, for a deep dive to a city council or a subcommittee. So happy to engage, with individual cities and think about how different programs are, are best delivered to each of our city partners. So that was the slide on programs. Not sure if there's any more questions or we can continue on.
This is Alex, and unless there are more questions about programs, I think I'll move on to the last slide.
Sorry, everyone. I just had my younger daughter's school was calling. So we as you probably have seen and is clear, local programs, very big emphasis of what we do. But in addition to our local programs, and I would call this sort of part of our efforts to invest in our community, but also building brand awareness. Our sponsorships that we do, and so we've now for 2 years been running what we call our hyper local sponsorship campaign. So while PG&E might sponsor the Warriors or the Oakland A's, we sponsor your local Little League and soccer teams, and we think that that's a very cost-effective way to build brand awareness at the grassroots level, but also support really important community organizations as well. So this is a kind of a summary, and we will provide, we have a lot more specifics on the types of organizations that we have given hyperlocal sponsorships to. I believe that's generally part of a kind of our annual marketing update. So you'll be seeing that. Next slide, please. Okay, I think that's it actually, right? So Q&A, let me see. Go one more slide, please.
Yeah.
All right, well, there we go, Q&A. So I know we've been jumping into a lot of questions as they have come up. And so and perhaps we've answered the questions that you may have. I will say over the next 6 months, just to give you a sense of, you know, the major decisions that we're going to be considering. This coming meeting, the major, I think, policy consideration is we do have an item on our reserve policy. And the goal is to simplify our reserve policy. Right now we have a multi-step reserve allocation waterfall. And some feedback we've gotten from credit rating agencies is a more simple policy eases their review. Maybe that's sort of a good reason to sort of step back and just talk a little bit about the credit rating process. So currently EBC is not credit rated. About, at this point, around 40% of CCAs do have a credit rating. It is one of our organizational goals this calendar year to go for and receive an investment grade rating. This is important for a lot of reasons, you know, particularly as we think about the big investments in clean energy projects that we have made and will continue to make. That investment grade rating has all sorts of benefits, from reducing collateral requirements that cost the agency money in the near term, to potentially considering big capital projects where we might issue a bond and we might invest in, you know, a big storage project or you know, electric vehicle charging infrastructure or the like. It's a really important signal both to the financial community, but also to the state of California about our financial stability and our capacity to be able to continue to provide this critical service to our customers. So it's something that has been a real area of focus over the last 2.5 years, the building of financial reserves. And our hope is that, you know, we are quickly nearing the point at which we have sufficient reserves in place to justify an investment grade rating. Then as we move into February and March, I don't foresee major policies. We may have some power purchase agreements for some both local and not local renewable energy projects that we've been evaluating, wind and solar. And then as you sort of we get to April, May, June, that tends to sort of be our budget setting season. So that's when we start to think about the budget of the agency, the value proposition. Right now we offer a 1% discount. Do we want to, can we continue to offer that? Do we need to reduce it? Should we increase it? That's often driven by dynamics related to the PUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, and PG&E rates. And that is also when, as we think about our local development expenditures. So, you know, how much money do we have to invest in more local projects, pilots, and the like? So, you know, that should really be the next 6 months. I would expect, hopefully, nothing unexpected occurs, but as you will see, operating in the California energy market is always be ready for the unexpected, whether it's a new round of blackouts or a major heat wave. It's always a bit of a wild ride. So, you know, the one thing we did not get to much here, and frankly, I wanted to sort of reserve a separate time for it, is all things related to the exit fees and PG&E costs. And that's largely because we could spend a full 2 hours just going through what is the exit fee and how is it calculated, and what do we think the impact on the agency is going to be. So that's something that we will continually be providing incremental education around. So look out for those opportunities to learn more about the power charge indifference adjustment and what that means for EBCE. So with that, my presentation is done. Are there any general questions? I don't know if we were able to. I don't think we heard from everybody, so maybe this is an opportunity to ask a couple of our board members who did not ask questions to quickly introduce themselves. You have Council Member Tiedemann. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Tiedemann.
Tiedemann. Yep.
Hi everyone. I'm Aaron Tiedemann. I'm a new council member for Albany. I'm excited to be here.
Council Member Narum as well.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Narum. I've been on Pleasanton City Council for about 7.5 years. I was the alternate to EBCE last year and am the representative for this year, and looking forward to our discussion next week on setting our default rate and so forth for the EBCE and our residents to give them choice.
Great. And then I think Council Member Marquez, I think with you, then we'll have everybody.
Thank you. Good to see everyone. Happy New Year. I also served as a board alternate and happy to be taking over. Have big shoes to fill from Councilmember Almendo, has been very active since the inception of East Bay Clean Energy, but it's really good to see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you all for taking time out of what I'm sure is a very busy day. And, again, I am here as a resource for you to answer any question that you may have, explain any matter that's, in front of the board, or just, provide some input on energy matters that you may be trying to better understand and deal with in your city. So,
Nick?
Yeah.
Two things. One, I first want to make sure everybody was introduced to, most people probably already know, but introduced to Mayor Diane Martinez of Emeryville, who's the vice chair of EBCE, and presumably will become the chair over the summer sometime over the next period of time. So Diane's great. Mayor Martinez, you want to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Kalb. I'm Diane Martinez. I'm on the second term of Emeryville City Council. And as Chair Kalb mentioned, I am the mayor of Emeryville this year, but I've had the pleasure of serving with EBCE since the steering committee back in 2015. So the topics can get a little dense. So please feel free to use staff to understand all of the things that we're being asked to consider, and feel free to reach out to me as well, because I learn something new every day. But it's a very worthwhile agency, and we have a great staff. I'm really sorry to see Stephanie going, but we have a really phenomenal staff that we've built up in just a few short years. And it's a remarkably strong agency for how young it is. So I'm very pleased to be able to serve.
Thanks, Diane. I concur with everything you just heard. This is a great agency. Some of the things that we deal with are kind of a little bit intense in terms of the complexities. I mean, electricity policy is one of the most kind of one of the most complex areas of public policy in the state, probably any state. And so don't knock yourself if in your first few board meetings something comes up and you're like, I don't understand what this is. That's okay. That, you know, like no one's expecting every board member to understand every intricate detail. That's why we all have learned as elected officials to ask questions and to talk to staff ahead of time or at the meeting. So everybody is going to do great. Nick, could you share what protocol you prefer board members to use when they have a question of staff? Should they always go through you, or what do you prefer?
Yeah, generally, I would say through me or through our clerk. So Adrian will be serving as our clerk. And so I think those are generally, you know, the two. I think, you know, in some cases, if there's a, you know, if there's already sort of a workflow that's going, you know, I don't want to stand in the way if there, you know, are already conversations happening with a specific staffer, but generally speaking, you know, just so I know kind of what the requests are and can keep on top of your board priorities, that usually is helpful for me.
Great, excellent. And for those of you who I haven't met before, I think I've met many of you. I'm the chair. I'm an Oakland City Council member, as I think you know. I'm in my second year as the chair of EBCE and starting my third term as an Oakland Council member. And I was on the steering advisory committee prior to EBC getting set up that Scott Haggerty had led and has been productive. And now here we are. Prior to being a council member, I was fortunate to have worked in the clean energy and climate space as an environmental advocate with a Union of Concerned Scientists. So I did have some background in these issues in years past, and I'm thrilled to continue to work on these matters in this capacity. So as the chair, my door is open, or my phone is available if board members need to call me for anything. As Nick mentioned earlier, we have a committee structure. So if anybody believes they may be interested, I've gotten a couple of emails already from all of you, but if any is interested in being appointed to a particular committee, please send me an email or text, and happy to consider that. That's it. Is that anything else?
Yeah, I had a general question going back to early in the presentation, which was, if I remember correctly, the goal is 100% carbon free by 2030 or in 2030. Is there a conceptual framework or idea of how to get from here to there? I mean, I think what happened with Brilliant 100 is, you know, sort of suggestive of the difficulty of that path.
Yes, you know, we do. And Alex, if you could just send around the board item from the December consideration. So this is all done. That goal was set in the context of our integrated resource plan, which, you know, is very, you know, in great depth. It goes into the types of projects, the number of contracts, the quantity of solar and wind that we're going to need to procure to get to that goal. And also speaks to the costs as well.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, I would suggest that we give everybody back 13 minutes of their day. Okay, thank you all.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.